So, I call this the fully authentic leader because I felt as though a lot of things that I hear as an executive coach, there's people that feel as though some things compromise their authenticity. And to clarify and qualify, I think what authentic means is going to be part of the story of how do we get to maybe feeling like something is authentic and it's not authentic. And I think the most important skill set to have is self-awareness. Like, are you really showing up the way you thought you were? Or are you showing up in a way that other people see you differently? And I think that's where authenticity comes in, because even though you may feel like you're presenting a certain value or a certain image, it's really going to depend on how other people see you and they take that. And so that is how I came up with this topic. And it may shift or challenge some of your definitions around authenticity. I am very open to having more conversations around that. But just know that today's presentation is going to share a little bit more on like how I define it and how I navigated through my leadership skill sets, as well as how I tend to show up and how it's really helped me with my career. So here is a quick QR code if you want to connect on LinkedIn. That's another great way for us to stay in touch. And you'll see here, even though I do work for SACE as their leadership development director, a lot of this comes back from my old days of starting my business 12 years ago as an executive coach. And so I currently still run that organization. We do a lot of work for a lot of companies that are outside of SACE's corporate sponsors as well as attendees. And what I found from these stories and the stories that I get in SACE are very consistent all the way around. And I think the most important thing that I would like for you to consider is, are you someone worth following? And a lot of people that come to me for executive coaching, they tend to be ones that are passed up from a promotion. They don't even get nodded or considered for amazing opportunities that help showcase these strengths and talents. And a lot of times, I think they're really good at performing. And so, my question to you is again, where are you when it comes to execution and performance? And if you're a lot like me, that values that my performance is maybe a reflection of my image, you may give yourself a really high score on this left side, which I will say I would do. And early on in my career, I was like, I always want, to get an A grade in everything that I have. But then when it came to maybe how I lead others, and how I am able to helping other people to perform at the level, if I had to be honest, it was very low. And that is why I would probably, in hindsight, like really have to support my managers on why they didn't promote me for so long. Now, I was really good, or I could be great if I had the perfect team, right? Like I would have complaints like, oh, this person that was I was leading on my project, like really didn't value the same things I did. They would like check out at 6 p.m. They had this thing called family that they had to spend time with. And I felt as though like your values on what's really important, getting good work done, did not align with me. And so therefore I would blame other people and their lack of commitment, let's put it that way, to projects and why I was not a great leader. Now, 100% true, right? If I had better people, I would have a better team. I'll be very vulnerable to say, like, I felt like if I had 10 of me, we could rule the world, right? And so the problem was there aren't 10 of me in the world. But if I flipped the question and I looked at some other people, how are they able to achieve such great success with people that did not look like 10 of them? So then I started to think like, wow, that's really a limiter in myself. Like my limitation in my leadership is the fact that I could only work with other people like me. Now, if I had to put parity along what really happens in the world, is that, well, other people are constrained that they don't get to pick nine other people just like them. And in fact, like they don't get probably more than one or two other people that are very similar in those ideas. But the fact that they could broaden their leadership to work with a various amount of people, I had to be honest and say, like, okay, there's something different there. And what I want each one of you to think about is like, what is it that limits your ability to lead other people. And I mean, that starts the idea of like, well, if you can only lead people like you, is that where you feel like you're leading authentically? Or is your ability to lead other people that are different than you and in different ways than you normally would want to lead yourself, does that make you an inauthentic person? And I'm telling you this from somebody that's done this talk and variations of this talk over and over again. And I get a lot of people that say, like, Jim, I get it. That is 100% true. I totally understand. And I'll get some people that say, Jim, like, then you're selling out your identity. That you're no longer being unique to yourself. And in fact, you're being inauthentic in what you do. And so, therefore, I don't think what you're sharing is true. And I'd like for you to each think about that statement and where I may be sharing and where that might be true for you. But my hope for today is that we can see some of the things in a different way because I had to come across this experience for myself. And maybe some of these tools and how I share them can help you to maybe see things a little bit more differently and why it's your ability to lead different people the way they need to be led may be a more fully authentic version of yourself rather than maybe limiting yourself to say, this is authentic to me because this is how I'm comfortable in what I do. Okay. And so, again, I could be totally wrong. I could get this totally off. And so I do want to reserve right for each one of you to comment again in the comment box. Tell me where you may disagree. And I'd love to like make this more conversational towards the end. And after the talk, I'll be hanging around. If you have time at the top of the hour to stick around for another 15 minutes, more than happy to like stop the recording and engage with you and really try to wrestle these things out with what you have. Okay. So the first tool I want to share with you is like really understanding what is it that drives this leadership behavior. And I like to say there's three different things that come in. And one of them is nature, like how are you born? And one of the areas to think about is like, I like to say like you're left-handed or right-handed. Like there's some of us that are ambidextrous. And when I look into like the people that say they're ambidextrous is like one of three things. One is, and usually it's the lefties. Their parents put the pencil in their right hand a lot, so they would become more right-handed. So they're left-handed in everything, but writing they're right-handed. That's one thing. Um, Secondly, is they're true lefties. They're able to do everything left-handed, and they braced it, and they feel more comfortable doing things with their left hand. Now, the third is like the people that are saying, like, I know I am left-handed naturally, but I realize if I use my right hand also, I can do greater things. All that aside, the reality of being left-handed as a natural person is we're saying like this is how you were born. And such are different things. And a lot of you might have taken like different personality tests, discs, Enneagram, and all those things. And the validity in these tests when administered appropriately, I know that's very conditional, but I do believe like if you take the time to have these done professionally with someone to walk you through it, you'll find that there's a lot of consistency to help you understand where is your brain naturally wired. And my argument is just like you're either right-handed or left-handed naturally, your brain is also wired to do certain pathways naturally. And I'll use Myers-Briggs as one of them. I'm not saying this is the best one out there. I'm not saying this is the only one out there. I'm just using it as an example. And what it says is there are four different ways that they indicate you, whether you're introverted or extroverted, and that's I or E. The second one is what they call your sensing or your intuitive, and that's just really saying like, do you tend to be a little bit more, one way I would say is like detail oriented is one of them, or do you like bigger picture on how you do things? That's intuitive. The next one is feeling or thinking, and feelers tend to be more relationally oriented with people's feelings as how they tend to create outcomes. And thinkers tend to care more about outcomes and the quality of the outcomes that come, not as much on the people's feelings, I would say. And then J and P are the last letter is judging or perceiving. And J's and P's, they have a tendency to think things as either as there is a way to execute things once an idea is conceived, and that's judging. And perceiving says this is just a guideline of execution, but I reserve right to have different type of ways to execute things because things may change down the road. Now, what I was very important to realize, and if you've ever taken the online version of this, you may map all over the place on this. And my argument is because, again, you may be right-handed, but you learn to do things, some things left-handed. And so what's important to realize, like, ultimately is there is a natural way that your Myers-Briggs is done, and they tend to only index on one of these, but you have the ability to do all of these at any point in time. So like for me, I would say like I am I am naturally what they call an ENFP. I'm an extroverted person. I love to, and then one of the ways to say extroversion versus introversion is not necessarily how social you are, or like if you like an external battery is one of those things. Are you like solar charged with energy, or do you like to stay indoors and you're inwardly charged? That is a way, but I would say the better indicator of how your brain is wired is do you like to process things aloud or do you like to process things by yourself? Like that's probably the more clear way. Because I've seen very technical people that say they're introverted, but when I get them excited about talking about technical things, they prefer having whiteboards and talking aloud. So that's a true measure of introversion and extroversion. But when my extroversion is overdone, maybe I had too much fun with my friends, or I've done a lot of work and I've shared a lot of things unfiltered aloud, then I may have overused my right hand and I might be tired. And so I might have to go left-handed. And because I'm naturally right-handed, what I mean is like introversion would be my left hand. And so therefore I'm processing things more internally because I threw so much out. I've used that strength too much. And now I'm going to default to my other skill sets of introversion to help me with processing. Okay. So I hope that that's a little bit more clear for you in terms of what the difference is. And then so we have a comment, right? One person's INTJ or ENTJ, depending on the mood. So the one that you're most energized with is probably the mood that's going to bring out what you're naturally. And the INTJ or the ENTJ is going to base on how you feel when you're a little bit more drained. And a fun fact about INTJs and ENTJs would be is the ENTJ tends to be a lot more structured in how they like to do things, where the INTJ cares about like, I don't care, let's just do it, let's get this done, because they care more about efficiency over structure. So, anyways, I'm a geek on Myers-Briggs and actually in all personality tests, but we can talk about that another time. Okay, so that is nature. Like I want you to see that there are natural ways that we're doing things. Now, nurture is like, what have you been, what of it is your culture around you, maybe the workplace or different things in your life? Where does that tend to elevate other areas of your leadership behavior? So, for example, and it could be all over the map when it comes to, let's say, Myers-Briggs, for example. But nurture really is what will you do that truly is something that is learned, not necessarily natural. And so with this, I'll share a little bit my how my Asian culture kind of comes and nurtured things. For example, like so for me, like I had this academic background where like grades were really important. And the natural part of me, I would say, is I am pretty competitive when it comes to sports because I am an N and I like to maximize things. Like I'm one of those people that, hey, a bowl of pho is 3.75 for a medium, but the large and it's twice as much is only 50 cents more. I will always take the large every single time, which I thought everybody did, but my wife, no, she will always order the medium and I have to remind her to order the large because I might want to steal some later on as well. It kills me, not because I might be financially stingy, which tends a lot of Asians think that might be the reason why, but no, it kills me that my daughter, her Jersey Mike's turkey sandwich, she only wants turkey, bread, and a little bit of mayo and some cheese on it, whereas my wife likes it Mike's way, which means like the peppers, the lettuce, the tomato, the vinegar, and the salt, and all that stuff. And I have to buy two small Jersey Mikes for them instead of one big medium, which is like 30% cheaper, right? But it's because the maximization. I would rather them buy two regular sizes instead of two smalls, and then you can eat the other half later on. Like that's how my mind thinks because that is naturally me. But that's part of my maximization in that way. Now, growing up, I was all about good grades. And my parents said, if you get good grades, you can get to a good school. And if you get to a good school, you can then be able to work hard at university so you can get a good job. And that's all my parents really indexed for was like, hey, I want you to learn these skill sets that minimize risk on not getting to a good school, minimize risk when it comes to getting a good job, and minimizing risk on like living out your life by continuing to go back to school and maximizing your ability to be qualified to get a job, right? Now, the reason that became nurtured, not natural for me, because in my mind, like I'm thinking, why would I want to spend an extra 3 hours to get an A when I can get a B right now? I think B's are okay. I mean, there's some areas where I need to get an A, but they wanted me to get an A in everything. And that was really hard for me. And this is when I start going to my first foyer of understanding like how is me doing what comforts me important and what are some leadership skills and tools that I could do to bring that on. So the first leadership skill I want you to look through this on is understanding those strengths and weaknesses, what I call the 70-30 principle. And what the 70-30 principle really is helping you to do is identify the things that are naturally energizing for you. And I would say this is your nature side of things. And then what are the things and activities that you do that are currently draining? And that would be where I say, like, okay, this is opportunity for growth and what we can nurture in a way. And so the 70-30 is to say, if you have a growth mindset, I'd like for you to consider what would it look like instead of indexing everything to be 100% energizing for you and 0% draining to maybe already you're at 80-20 using Pareto's principle, that everything just happens naturally at 80-20, meaning you're probably doing a lot of things already most of the time, 80% here, but you're having to do, and I think that's a key operative word, that you have to do things in your 20. And so, a fun story for me, like being Korean American, is I would like to say I'm American 70% of the time in terms of culture, customs, and how I think. But I grew up culturally Korean, and I still have this resident 30% of my Korean American identity that still exists. So, a fun way to say that is naturally I'm American and I do all these things, but I still do things that are Korean that I would say represents 30% of the time. And because of that, I sometimes find it really draining. And, the funny thing is actually my parents are visiting right now. They're at my house. They're in the living room. I just had lunch with them and I just had lunch with them and I love them. But I will say I feel like when I talk to them and I have to be mindful of their culture because they're flipped out, right? They're more 70% Korean and maybe 30% American culture. Like I have to exercise my 30. Okay. And what I think is really important for to think about this is if I lean into my 30, I am able to build a stronger relationship with them. I might not feel comfortable, but if I manage so that I'm just doing what I can do at 30%, it's a healthy amount of discomfort and there's a growth opportunity in there because I'm leaning in. And a story that like I share often in my keynotes is like with my parents, like I had a really horrible relationship with my parents growing up. Like there were times when I didn't talk to my dad specifically for like a year. Like when I was 14, I didn't talk to my dad for a year. And this is while I worked at my dad's sandwich shop growing up, right? So there was a lot of challenge. But if I look back at this tool, and if I had this tool and I had someone mentor me, they would say, Jim, what you're doing is you're doing too much of your 30 with your dad and so much of your 70 to revert back that I was pushing too much of my strengths on my dad's weaknesses, meaning that I was trying to be too Korean to appease my dad. And I was pushing too much of my Americanness and why my dad wasn't American enough to maybe like help me to not have to do so much of my 30 in a way that it created a lot of friction and tension. And because I wasn't willing to grow and learn to do things my dad's way, again, going back to even like the beginning slide of like, I just cared about performance and how can I work at my dad's shop that I didn't want to be there and do the best performance. I didn't care about elevating some areas in my 30 that would help me to lead other people, including leading my dad. So hopefully you can kind of see full circle, like what would it look like then for me to have leaned into my 30 and acknowledge that, hey, if I have a growth mindset, there's a Korean culture aspect there that I could learn about this and do this and not worry about too much about the reflection of the quantity and the quality of work, but just maybe have a conversation, say, Dad, I'm still learning. I want to do it your way. It may not be as good if I do it my way, but I'll do it your way. So then I can help you to feel comfortable trusting me and allowing us to have a better relationship. And the side note to that is a little bit more like I want you to think about your authentic leadership. Like being fully authentic for me, I feel like is leaning into your 30 because there's a growth opportunity there. Because if I only know how to do work with my dad the way I want to do it, then I'm a very disposable person, meaning like I'm only limited in doing stuff my way versus if my manager or other people would experience me like wow, Jim's really good at what he does. And a lot of times when you interview, what they're saying is, here's your resume. I see all the accomplishments. Look at the grades that you have, all that stuff. The real thing that they don't say is, okay, can you do it my way? Or it might not be just their own way. Can you do it the corporate way? And the reason that's so important is because if you say yes, then you have to be willing to sacrifice not only some of your natural way of doing things, but you're going to have to be willing to sacrifice some of this performance in a way that you can learn how to do this the corporate way. And so if I, so if I owned a company, which I do, I own three companies right now, and I hired every single one of my coaches that they could do everything their way, that's awesome. But I'm very limited in how I can help them to help our clients because they're very limited in how they could do things. But when I bring on coaches on my team, I tell them like, hey, there's a way that our company likes to do things, and our clients like the way we do things. So I'd love for you to see if you can do things our company way and allows me to grow our company because I have one way to grow people and I have one consistent way I can lead others versus having to manage 12 or 13 different systems of leading other people, which limits our company's way of getting things done as well as our capacity to lead other people, right? So that's why the 70-30 tool is so important for you to understand that your comfort level, sure, it's uncomfortable. And nobody wants to be more uncomfortable than they need to. But the executive coach guideline I would share with you is manage at least 70-30. Pick the things in your weaknesses that you need to learn and you should learn that will help you to be more relevant and useful for others to see your fullness and see your leadership. And so then the question becomes of authenticity, right? And what I think is really important to realize is the things in your 30 will never be good as the things in your 70. So, for example, me being right handed, everything I do right handed is natural, it's energizing, and I can do without even thinking about it. But if I have to start doing things with my left hand, I have to learn how to redo it with my left hand. I'm going to have to be really thoughtful and conscious of how I can do this competently with my left hand. And it's to be super draining. And that's learning how to do things the corporate way. It's learning how to do things your manager's way. But the secret that a lot of people don't realize for their own growth is you can get better. Meaning at first, it's hard to do, but if you practice over and over again, you'll never feel like your right hand. Which again, if you're indexing your right hand as being authentic, I could see that. It's being authentic. But you won't be able to be fully authentic, meaning leverage and utilize some of the weaknesses and turning it slowly. It'll never be a strength, but it'll be stronger. Then you won't be as weak as you were and you'll be now ambidextrous in how you get to do things. You can do it your way, your company way, and anybody else's way. And that is where now your brain starts to grow. Your brain starts to practice what they call neuroplasticity. Your brain has this leadership mindset, a growth mindset, a scalability mindset, where now no longer are you indexing just on the outcome, on how you can do things best, but now you're going to learn how can I bring my best with the constraints that it's going to have to be my manager's way or a way that the people I lead, I can be pliable in understanding other ways that other people can contribute. I am more open to hearing how other people want to attack a problem, how they see we can solve challenges that we have, and you're more willing to try things, which makes you be a leader that people want to work for. And that's the part of the story that I want you to hear in terms of my leap from someone that was only cared about individual performance and that how that limited my ability to be seen as someone that could lead other people to being able to embrace a lot more of my 70 and 30, elevate the areas of my weakness so that I would be able to increase my capability and be seen as someone not only just a leader, but I could also show up more fully and I could become the full best version of myself every day. Because I'm not diminishing my strengths. I'm just increasing my capabilities in some of the things and my weaknesses that I do. Okay. So taking a pause here, reading some comments here. Awesome. Yes. I'm glad that you liked my examples. Yes. Healthy discomfort. In fact, I love this idea of the fact that life is all about learning how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And then there's a saying at that I use at my gym because everybody wants to work out the easy way. I tell them comfort is a slow way to death. And if you think about it, it might not be 100% true, but it's the mindset. Like if you always want things to be easy for you, I imagine later on, if you've seen them, was that movie Wall-E, where we're all like sitting down, having comfort, drinking sodas on a lounge chair. And that comfort debilitates you and slowly erodes your ability, even to the point it erodes your strengths. But by continuing to work out your leadership skill sets and finding new areas of growth, that is where I think you'll have fully be able to increase in life as well. Okay. Um, so help us illustrate that. I want to give you a little exercise, and I'm going to use Leo, if you don't mind, I'll use you as my guinea pig here. I want you to grab a pen, and I'd love for you to grab a pen and a piece of paper. It could be scratch paper, and no one's going to see it unless you want to share it. Valavan, if you want to jump in, I see your nostrils there. That's okay. And maybe you could also, play along with Leo here and help us along. And what I want you to do with this pen is I want you to take a piece of paper and I want you to sign your name on it anywhere that you want. So it can be like imagining you just got a credit card bill, right? I just went to lunch with my parents and I got the bill and I had to sign for my purchase. And so I'm signing away and you just do it, right? And I'm checking in with Leo. Did you sign your name? Looks good. Okay, cool, cool. No worries, Valavan. You can have your camera on. That's fine. We're all friends here. And so if you guys have your piece of paper, you sign your name, I want you to look at it. And I want you to see like how this might be signing your name, what signing in your name in your 70 looks like. That's just an illustration of it. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you to do it my way. And this way might be is I want you to close your eyes and right underneath that autograph, I want you to sign it and make it look exactly the same as much as possible. Okay? I know that's not easy to do, but give it a shot. Try to see if you can make that look. And if you've done that exercise, put in the chat box on a scale of 1 to 10, how close is it? 1 being that it totally looks nothing like it, and 10 means it looks 100% just like it is. Okay? So go ahead and throw that in the chat box. Leo, I'll ask you if you want to come off mute. How close does yours look like to you?
I'd say it's an 8.
Okay,
Yeah, pretty
that's pretty
close.
good. Awesome, awesome. I'm seeing a lot of other eights here. See eights, 4, 8, 7, 9. 80. Sandra gave us a percentage. Awesome. It's more legible. That's funny. Katie. Um, 9. So higher numbers, right? Tara also says it looks better. I love it, right? And what's important is to realize is like, okay, cool. A lot of you are able to pivot to some point and doing a variable way of signing your autograph. And now I'm going to give you an example of what it would look like. Let's say you got a new job, or actually this happened to me. I got a job and I got there and I thought it was going to be like super easy, exactly what I want, like signing my number. And then I got the job. I did the work. It's like, oh, this is a little harder than I thought, right? So it's I'm doing my strengths. I'm doing what I thought they would do, and it's like as if they had me close my eyes and try to do the work I can do like with my eyes closed, right? It's like, they give you a different computer, like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to use this system, or I'm used to Dell's, but now I have to use a Mac, or I have to use an HP, like all those variables, right? Or having to drive into the office and all those things. But now, but I was able to do it, right? I was like slowly in the things that were a little uncomfortable, they got more comfortable and were adaptable, right? And then I had a manager, because all my great managers, guess what? They all get promoted. And then I had to get a manager that I really didn't get along with, right? Like this manager, I don't know. The previous manager loved me, hired me, and was invested in me. But then the next manager, I didn't get along with. Not only that, the person didn't hire me, wasn't invested in me, and that manager probably couldn't get rid of me faster, right? And that manager was like, if I had to take this pen and put it in my other hand and do everything as if it was left-handed. Okay. So a lot of you might have had that experience where you got, a manager worked well, or you had a new manager and this new manager felt like everything was switched to your weaker hand. For me, it would be my left hand. And I want you to sign that paper with your left. You can open your eyes though, but I want you to sign that paper with your left hand. And I want you to try to make it look as good as possible. All right. And then after you've done that, go ahead and put in the chat box between 1 and 10. What was that experience like for you? And Leah, when you're ready, let me know. What did you get?
It was a 2 for me.
A 2. Okay. Well, we see these numbers dropping. Yes, fives and twos, some threes and fours, a whole bunch of ones. Neil, glad you're human, Neil, because you're an amazing guy. And it's good to see that you're human as well. Um, Tara's jokes on me, left-handed. All right, Tara. But now, compare that to your right hand. So, Tara, are you saying that it looks better with your eyes closed doing it right-handed, but whereas maybe your first chance was a lot lower? Possibly, right? Deborah's saying it is not readable, not legible. Okay, cool. But do you see this analogy of what I'm saying? Like life is going to put this pen in other hands. And I think if you always prefer working into your strengths, you're going to say that that is me. Me, me, me. I'm always used to seeing an A grade, 100% execution, always performing at my best. And therefore, when you see something like when you close your eyes, it resembles you, but is it really you, right? Maybe it's not, you don't feel like it's fully authentic you. And now that I had you put the pen in the opposite hand, you got lower scores, right? You got a 1, right? You got a 0, you got a 4. And so what I want you to think about that mindset is what if you could be more willing to start with things in your other hand? Or when the opportunity comes, it may not seem like an opportunity, but the opportunity for growth comes that you get to put something in your opposite hand, or you're doing something in your weakness. It may look like, you don't give your best ideas to the team and you don't participate in team meetings as much because you're more introverted than extroverted, right? Extroverts love team meetings because they can say garbage and because that's how their process flow. And they'll give you like two, three answers, especially when they're doing whiteboarding, you're just throwing things on the board. Whereas introverts really struggle with that because they want to have fully processed thoughts and ideas. And so they don't feel comfortable and they may not seem as intelligent as other people because you're not able to contribute as much to the team. Now, that isn't true that you're not as intelligent. Just as much as if I look at all your opposite hand autographs, it doesn't mean that you have bad handwriting. It's just that you don't operate that way normally. So the growth opportunity is not to do it, but the growth opportunity is to start leaning into it and finding ways to navigate this. And so even though you feel like I might have forgotten you, Shabnan asked a great question. Do I have any strategies to make this easier? I'm already so lean and overloaded, and it's so draining indeed, right? So if you got a lot of things that are in your 30, a lot of things that you're doing in your weakness, how do you then be able to do things better is, and first is the mindset. Say, hey, this is in my weakness. I'm already drained. Which of these items do I have? Can I be more intentional about? And maybe not just do bare minimum just to get it done, but I'm going to spend a little bit more time to learn the process and maybe do it better so that over time it's not going to be as draining. And so what I mean by that is going back to this handwriting exercises, when you put the pen in the other hand, your signature, if you don't care about it, but you have to keep using the opposite hand, it'll never get better. In fact, I might even argue it could get worse because you hate it now, and your posture to this is going to become more and more apathetic. But if you lean into say, okay, if I gotta use my other hand, why don't I try? Then you'll start building neuromuscular connections that allows you to find efficiencies in how to do this with your opposite hand in a way that creates growth. And slowly over time, you can become opposite handed. Like for me, over time, I can become left handed. Doesn't mean I have to, but if I'm willing to do it, I can be. And believe it or not, when I first learned this tool about 10 years ago, I already understood the concept of neuroplasticity and growth mindset and leaning into things, but it was really cool that I got to play it out in terms of having to do things left-handed. I've had surgery on my right arm at least 7 times. And in my first 3 surgeries, I remember like I have to do things left-handed. And so it was frustrating, it was annoying. I just felt like it was just life's bother. And at the time also I was going through a lot of transition, new job, new city, a lot of different things, and it was just did not have the capacity to do so. But then subsequently, when I've had my right shoulder surgery, and then I've had to have other things taken care of on my right side, I was like, you know what? I'm going to lean into this. And I started using like chopsticks with my left hand. I started like really easily. I mean, I didn't do like, red soup based ramen, but sticky rice is a great easy one. And you take some seaweed wrappers, right? And you put that in rice. It's easy to eat, right? Really, really clean. But my dexterity got better over time. In fact, to this day, like I lean into my left hand even more when I don't have to do this. And it's great because I'm better at left-handedness, not as good as my right hand, but I don't feel as drained when I do too. And I have an uncle that's left-handed, and he used to always have to sit in a certain seat so he doesn't bump elbows with the righties. Well, now when that situation occurs, like, oh, I'll eat left-handed, I'll be the buffer for you, and I'll just eat left-handed. And he's so impressed by that I do things left-handed. And in fact, it's kind of funny, like when I have to reach over, I'll switch chopsticks over so I'm not reaching over people's faces when I want to get food. And you're like, wow, that's pretty cool. It's like, yeah, it's a neat party trick. But what's really awesome is like everything in my life, I see through that lens now, and I'm more willing to do things in different ways. And that
Oh,
neuroplasticity made me someone that I'm able to lead others and able to actually be more useful to more different people. And that's where I'm trying to say my argument then becomes is maybe the things in your 30 where we feel like are preventing this, and in fact may make you feel like you're being inauthentic, is really that limitation is holding you back from truly being authentic and fully yourself. Whereas if I were to come up to you and meet you, if I came up and I just only use my right hand, doesn't necessarily make me fully me when you meet me. I don't walk around with my left hand tied behind my back and say like, "Hey, this is me." No, I bring both hands. And I use my left hand where it's convenient now, Whereas before, I only used my left hand when I had to. And now you get this full side of me in a way. And so this is where you might start seeing like, hey, do I have the ability to now use some of my weaknesses a little bit more instead of overusing my strengths? And by doing so, I start gaining more of a growth mindset in what I do rather than just feeling limited in being the capacity of what I feel comfortable and not having opportunities to explore ways that other people may present and say this works for them. Because one of the things you may know in life is like a strength overused will always become your weakness. And for a lot of you where you might feel like you're starting to tap out or plateau in your career, I can probably increase like 30 to 40% of your leadership skills and your productivity just by getting you to be willing to do things the opposite way. That you would see the value of some of the strengths other people bring that you see as a weakness and allow you to not only tap that for yourself, but then build stronger relationships with other people and allowing them to help you augment some of those weaknesses because now you see it's a strength and you're not limited to what you can produce out of that perceived weakness, but you're engaging now with other people on your team to take that weakness that you have into a strength and you're able to show up fully in so many different ways. And so, as we talk through these things, that's where I want you to start considering and I wanted to give you a little bit of like that homework. Just keep practicing and seeing awareness in what are those things that you're doing that you might be only doing in your right hand. What are the things that you could do that would help you to try things that maybe other people are asking you to bring to the table? And from it, you'll then have the capacity to grow and scale forward from it. Okay. Um, So with that, that's kind of like your homework assignment for now. And if you do this homework assignment in our next session next week, what I'm going to do is then help you to identify specific areas of your life that you may be over indexing and then how you can have a better quality of life. And I'm going to bring the peace index for that in our next week's session. And then you don't have to have been here
For
to
you
this week's session to
for
benefit
finding
from
those
this
missing parts.
to benefit from this. But what I do want you to consider is that if you do it, there's another layer that you can start applying to this tool that is pretty sufficient on its own. And then what we're going to do later on is identify which of these areas are in your 70, which of these are in your 30 compared to the five. Because after you score yourself, you'll have your top, you'll rank them. By the way, your top two will be the things that you care about that are easy in your 70 and you might be over indexing on those to bring you happiness in your life, but you might not see how the things that you've been ignoring because it's your weakness are really an anchor that's dragging you down, and your strengths are now providing diminishing returns. While your weaknesses, if you work on it, actually does the opposite and provides you compounding returns. And then from it, what are the different areas in your life for your personal health that you can index on? And we'll talk about what we call your pies and understanding the different energy sources that you can gain. And then we'll bring this all together to help you to understand, well, if you are in your 70, there's different ways in your 70, and there's different areas of your 30 that this comes out to. And how do you do this in a healthy way so that you're avoiding the areas in your red that's going to burn you out, which also goes back to like somebody else that's saying like, hey, what if I have too much stuff in my 30 that I'm doing? Well, you have to learn to do things in your 30 in a scalable way to manage it so that you can continue to live your life in the green, right? And the problem is a lot of people think that anything in this, you know, negative feeling zone or this low energy zone is bad. I don't think so. That's a very fixed mindset to say I can only operate in my strengths over here, but you'll never be able to grow your strengths unless, at least you can never grow your full strength of who you fully are unless you're able to dip in a healthy way the areas of weakness. If any of you go to the gym, any of you lift weights, this is exactly the parallel that you can see that you can only get stronger by getting a little bit weaker and being able to learn from those weaknesses and really use them back into your strengths that you do. Okay, so a sneak peek at what we're looking at ahead, but continue to like do this pencil exercise or this pen exercise we did earlier. Think about like what would it feel like for you to lean in a little bit. Maybe if you wanted to, um, try to audit some of the things that you might do in your day-to-day life. Like what are the things in your 30? Put a whole list here. And what are the things in your 70? Put a whole list of items here. And then if you look at this, where are you? Right? Like right now in your life, where are you? Like for me, I'm always trying to be at 70/30. And the challenge is, as I am getting better and I'm my own boss and have all this leeway in leadership, is to always find things in my 30 to help me have a growth mindset. And in fact, some of the secrets for me is like my phone, I'll always carry in my left pocket because it is in my 30 and it just neuralistically reminds me to do things left-handed. I'm right-handed, but guess what? My watch is on my right hand. Most people that are right-handed put their watches on the left hand, but I do a lot of things inherently that disrupt my life to kind of have that growth mindset, as well as it's helping me to be more comfortable in the areas that I'm naturally just uncomfortable and have this baseline of discomfort in what I do. But it's a healthy baseline. It's something that I'm leaning into and I'm leveraging for my own growth in what I have. Okay. So for each one of you, create those audits. Find areas that you can grow. What can you do differently moving forward? And a lot of it you'll find is just the mindset of what you do. And then next week we'll come back together and we'll do that practice. And how does it look to practice to become comfortable being uncomfortable and help you to find other areas that you can also use this principle in your life to scale you out and to grow in the areas your weaknesses. And then what are some internal narratives that you have in your life that reduce you down? Like again, like I'm always looking for vacation. I'm always looking to make my life easier. That is an unhealthy narrative versus I'm looking at ways to continue to grow myself. I'm looking at ways to scale myself. I'm looking for opportunities of growth. That's how you're going to be able to become better and better. And that will follow over in your relationships with people at work, relationships at home, how you manage your time. Like my whole calendar is focused around managing 70/30 and leaning into the areas of my 30. And you'll see this growth mindset not only helps you, but you'll find yourself growing in ways that you might not have known existed because that's where opportunity comes. And I'll leave with this thought is people say that luck, there's no such thing as luck. That luck is the equation of um, when preparation meets opportunity. And my equation to that would be is you'll have a lot more opportunities and you'll be more prepared if you focus on the things that you're under prepared for and you haven't had any time of creating those opportunities because these were the areas that you didn't even focus on. And that's, I believe, where those things in your 30 can be. So if you work in your 30, you're more engaged, then you'll have a lot more luck. And for a lot of people in STEM, networking is probably one of those things, like learning to network, learning to be a little bit more extroverted, learning how to socialize with different people that you feel uncomfortable with. That will present more opportunities for you, as well as give you the preparation to have those conversations with people that may open the doors to where you want to go. Okay. So with that, I'll leave you there. Thank you so much for coming out and listening to my story. I'm really touched that so many people would want to hear and actually stick on. So thank you for all being here. Do some homework. Come back next week and even maybe even love to hear some of those opportunity growth stories that you have. Um, and then otherwise, if you have some more questions, I'll stop the recording now and love to have a little conversation with you, answering some of the questions that I might have missed. Okay?